This is Evan Rogerson, and I'm MotorGang here, and today we're going to be breaking down the 2.0 game manual update. This update is pretty big and has some absolutely crazy stuff, including changes to the 5-second trapping rule, which it's been 5 seconds since I started competing like close to a decade ago. And they also effectively made match loading illegal by 2 different rules. So this is going to be kind of a crazy one. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe in order to please the YouTube algorithm, and let's get into it. So very first thing off we have is some changes to the definition of the park zone. So now instead of just the park zone being the barrier, it also includes this section of tiles within the barrier. So this does have some minor implications for what is considered protected for parking and also the definition of parking, but nothing too major there. Moving on to the next thing, we do have some clarifications on blocks being scored. So like the edges of the clear plastic are not considered inside surfaces. So you can kind of see here with that block right there, they added that to the picture. You can see what used to be considered a scored block is now, or maybe was considered scored. It was kind of an edge case, but that is now very clearly not scored, which totally makes sense that that wouldn't be scored. But I think it does have some implications for some of the people that were trying to goal stuff using those edges of the goals right there as well. Next up, we have some changes to the autonomous win point criteria for Worlds qualifying only events. So basically event region championships and signature events. The regular autonomous win point criteria have not changed at all. But for Worlds qualifying events, basically they changed 2 things. Instead of having to score 7 blocks, you now must score 10 blocks. So I think this is a pretty fair change. If you're playing at like a signature event, that just means 5 blocks per team, which I still think is pretty reasonable. If you have your preload and you go to empty out a loader, that does still only get you 4, so you probably need to be like emptying out a loader and grabbing some from the middle of the field. And even within the middle of the field, there's only like stacks of 3, so you need to be doing at least 2 things in order to do that. Or you can do 2 if your partner can only do 1 set of things. That would also do it. But I do think raising the bar, that's good. And then the other interesting thing is you need to have at least 2 scored blocks in across 3 different goals. So instead of you just had to get, previously you just had to get like 1 block in 3 goals, now you have to get 2 blocks in each goals. I do think this makes it much harder because I've seen some videos online of teams trying to like, they just like put one in kind of from the side into that top center goal, but now you can't do that anymore. So I think this is interesting. I'm not quite sure. I have to see this play out, but nothing here seems too crazy. And they also did say that they might increase the difficulty again for Worlds, such as making you have to score 12 blocks instead of 10, which I think that would be good for Worlds, increasing the difficulty there. But as for these specific changes, I think they're fine. I don't have any super strong opinions about them. Next up, more changes to GG2. They've been doing that a lot recently. So originally, it used to be you just had to have team members there in order to not count as a no-show. Then they changed it, I think, like earlier this year to you must have like a robot at the start of the match in the drive team station to not count as a no-show. Now your robot must stay there the entire time for the match in order to not count as a no-show. So I think this is really just trying to make it so people can't just like have their robot at their pits working on it to try and fix it, and you do still have to actually show up to the matches. So I think this is perfectly fine and probably a good thing, but like just have a robot that actually works and can go on the field instead of having to take it back to your pits to get it fixed. Next up, they also changed it so that if you're using smart field control at an event and you are getting the legacy field control error, then that counts as that is your robot issue, and the referees can have you remove your robot from the field in order to play. So because if you cannot connect to field control, you can't play. I don't remember what exactly causes this issue. I think it might be something to do with like out-of-date firmware, or it might also be something is messed up with the controller. But basically, if you're having this issue, the refs might make you take your robot off the match. So always make sure, try to test your robot on Smart Field Control if you can. Basically, all you need for that is an extra brain, as you can download the Smart Field Control program and test off of an extra brain. So assuming you have at least 2 brains, I would highly, highly recommend doing this. That way you make sure you don't get this error and have to remove your robot from the field at the start of a match. Next up, GG4, another good change. Basically, this is the don't stick your hands into the field. And it used to be, since this is technically considered a violation, if you reach your hand over the field, you instantly lose autonomous, which actually happened, I think, in one of the finals matches at Mall of America. Now it says that as long as like you don't contact anything and it's relatively safe, so probably like above the height of the robots, then it's unlikely to be a violation. So basically, you get a little bit of grace here, and now sticking your hand over the field during auto-on is not an instant auto loss. So that's good. And then, yeah, head refs can still ask stripes members to step back and remain outside the field. And like if you're doing this all the time, it probably is going to be a violation, but having a little bit more lax there is probably good, just so random things like that don't end up affecting the outcome of the match. Just keep your hands away from the field, I guess, is the big thing there. All right, now this is one of the big ones. Holding count has been changed to a 3-second count instead of a 5-second count. So this dramatically reduces the amount of like pinning, trapping, anything like that that you can legally do. Additionally, they've also clarified that like the count should begin immediately as the pinning occurs. But the other really crazy thing here is that it's still a 5 count to back away. So if you pin someone for 3 seconds, you have to back away for 5 seconds. So it used to be like pin for 5, back away from 5. And you could, if you were coordinating with your alliance partner, perpetually pin the opponent. I pin for 5 seconds, then you pin for 5 seconds. And you just kind of swap off like that, and it's always legal, and one of their robots can't move at all the entire match. 3 seconds makes it so you can't do that anymore because now they have at least 2 seconds in between to get away or to try and do something. I don't know exactly how to feel about this. I mean, I've seen a bunch of matches. I was at Mall of America and another local tournament. There is a lot of pinning in this year's game, but I don't know if 3 seconds, how that's going to affect things. It's very different. And I am kind of worried about some teams being like the drivers are still going to be thinking inside their head, oh, I can hear them count up to 5 before I back away. So doing that to 3, I don't know. I want to see this in action before I make any decisions on whether or not I think this is good or bad, but I do think it is very interesting, and I do think it is going to have dramatic impacts on how the game is played. Definitely probably going to make things more offensive rather than defensive, obviously. All right, and this is probably one of the stupidest things the GDC has done in a while, because it's like they've done stupid things like, oh, you can't legally move because of the match load rule, but this actually has like actual ramifications on gameplay, and you can't just G3 wave it. So it used to say that if you intentionally or strategically move the blocks, it was a violation. So like if it was you accidentally knock a block out, and this is mainly via the match loaders. That's really the only time I've seen teams like knocking blocks out of the field. But now, if you remove a block from the field, regardless of whether or not it's like intentional or not, if it's an accident, it still counts as a violation. Now this is really, really, really bad. If you've seen like gameplay, it is super easy for robots to ram into the match loaders and blocks go flying out the top. That's just because the match loaders are poorly designed. And you can actually like here's a clip here of like 3 blocks all falling out the top of the match loader. And the thing is if you get 3 blocks to fall out of the field in a single match, that is an instant DQ. Or if you have 3 separate matches where 1 block falls out of the field, instant DQ. So this just sucks because the match loaders are poorly designed, and if a robot rams into them and a block happens to fall out, you could get instant DQ'd. So I think that this is an absolutely stupid rule. They used to have it like a Q&A that said, yeah, if it accidentally leaves the field, it's probably not a violation. But now you're going to have teams getting DQ'd for things that are basically out of their control. It seems to be pretty random on whether or not a block actually falls out. But the match loaders just have a ton of issues. I've seen videos of blocks getting stuck inside of them. I've seen issues with blocks just falling out the bottom, and it's not fair to the teams that because Vex designed match loaders that don't work very well, that then the teams get penalized for it. So I really do not like this rule. I think it either is going to be changed or you're going to see a lot of DQs for really stupid stuff. Basically accidents that are happening, especially because teams are going to be going for the match loaders during auto. It's part of the AWP criteria. This is going to be happening all the time, and I think if this doesn't get changed, you're going to see a ton of DQs for this. And they're instant DQs too. Doesn't matter if you win the match by a landslide, and it does still apply to ELIBs, it's still an instant DQ. The one bright thing about this is they've made it so that removing blocks from the field in skills is not a violation, so at least you won't instantly lose your skills matches if you knock blocks out of the field. The other thing that kind of kills match loading is SG9 is really weirdly worded. So when I first saw this, I'm like, yes, this is good. Because they made it very specific. I don't like it when rules say like it's up to the head referee's discretion because it opens the room for referees to have like bias internally during events and different teams getting different treatments, and also just isn't fair because you might have one ref doing something at one tournament and a different ref doing something at the other. And I don't like it when you can do something at one tournament and then you show up to the next one and it's illegal. So that's never good. So I do like that they added all the things like for each match affecting calculation, each match load should be considered worth a value of 3 points. If you do this number of match loads, it's now a DQ. It's all very wordy, so I'm not going to break it down exactly. But I do like that it is very specific on what is an illegal match load, how to determine when it is a DQ. And I think the rules there are fair. The only thing I don't really like is it says that the match loads must be entirely within the orange portion of the loader. Like once they're in the orange portion of the loader, it now becomes not an instant DQ, but an instant violation, which can add up to an instant DQ if you do enough violations. So you basically can't, like if there's 6 in there, it shouldn't be much of an issue because that's already illegal. But like if there's 5 in there and your rapid loading is when my concern pops up, because if one of the blocks is like dropping and it's technically within that orange area, and you put another block in afterwards, that's technically a violation. And if you do that 6 or more times in one match or across 3 matches, then it's an instant DQ. So I don't love this. I think they were just trying to get at is like you cannot have 7 blocks in the loaders at once, but I don't think that's really what they accomplished there. I think there's going to be a lot of gray areas about how fast can you actually match load now, which I don't love because you could very easily have the human mess up and then the robot gets DQ'd if your match loader accidentally goes a little bit too fast. So I don't really like that rule. Next up, SG11. I do quite like this rule. Previously, you only used to get the parking protections if you were actually already parked. So basically, I could go and sit in the other team's park zone, and since they can't get in there to park, it's never a violation because they are never parked in the zone. Now, as long as they're partially within the projection of the park zone, so they're like attempting to park basically, then it is a violation to interfere with them. I think this is more fair. It basically does the intent of the rule of you cannot stop people from parking at the end of the match. Now, this one's a little bit funny. So like it says events may wish to use inspection markers, zip tie stickers to identify robots that have passed inspection at the event. Inspection markers are subject to all robot rules, including legal materials and robot size expansion constraints. At Mall of America, they had like these inspection tags that you would screw onto your robot that say that you passed inspection. Now, they were technically 3D printed. So, since 3D printed parts are not legal in any capacity, even as decorations, technically Mall of America forced every single team competing there to violate the rules. And I was talking with some of my friends and it was like, actually this is illegal, but like it really didn't matter because every single team had the exact same 3D printed part and it was like a decoration. But I think yeah, it's probably good that you clarify this that like inspection markers need to be like legal and you can't have 3D printed inspection markers because technically it is illegal. Next up, they say that the brain screen does need to be visible through inspection. So you must be able to show off your brain screen to the inspectors during inspection. This is probably for things like firmware checks. However, you do not have to have the brain screen visible during matches. It's recommended, but it's not required. I think this is interesting. Just make sure that your brain screen is accessible. It's pretty hard to make a brain screen that's not visible that when the power button is still accessible because the stuff about power button must be accessible, that's still all the same. So it's not hard to make it where now the brain screen must also be visible just during inspection though. So you could still have it and like cover it up behind something as long as they can get to that during inspection. Now they did add a rule that is 100% of my doing. Um, your robot now has to move to count for points and skills. Rip the Jayhawk 30-point prog skills where we just set 2 robots down and the robots couldn't even move if they wanted to. So you can't just build like completely stationary robots to cheese park, but like even if you just have a regular robot, I mean you could still have it like spin the intake or something because technically that counts as moving. So like really the only thing that this affects is like the Jayhawk prog skills bots. Um, I mean we all knew this was coming, so like no big surprises there, but just having it be robots that move means that yeah, you can just like spin an intake or something if you're in V5 RC and you have your regular robot just in the park zone. So it doesn't really change much practically. Additionally, for VexU, unmodified legal raw stock is now legal. So, like previously when I had BrickBot and I had 2 bricks on my robot, technically the bricks were not legal. So I actually had to glue the bricks together to make a modified part, a fabricated part is what it's technically called. So I had to glue the bricks together in order to make it legal. Now you could just put 2 bricks inside your robot without gluing them together and it's now legal. Big brain stuff right there. Also, solid spheres are now legal VexU parts. I mean, this is just cool. Like, the more legal parts for VexU teams, the better. That's kind of all I got here for today. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments below on the game manual update. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe in order to please the YouTube algorithm, and I will see you in the next one.